Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the White Dragon podcast. It's your host, Andrea and I, and I'm here today with a part 2 of an episode that by far has been the most listened to. Estoy acá con Andrea Huerta, y for the people who have been listening to my podcast for a while, episode 39 was finding out I was autistic through TikTok. It's been a pleasure, honestly, building a friendship con Andrea, and the fact that I've learned so much about her, and I've been also in this process of her learning about herself. Entonces, agradecerte nuevamente, Andrea, de estar en este podcast y share tu wisdom.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Awesome. Hablemos un poquito de cuáles son las diferencias o como what you're feeling right now.
Okay, so for those who don't know, sorry.
No worries.
Okay, so for those who don't know, last podcast episode we did with Ioania, it was basically very much scripted. And I basically wrote out everything that I wanted to say and just spoke it out, read it out. But this time it's gonna be a little different. It's definitely gonna be less scripted. And that has me really nervous for many different reasons. One of them is because as an autistic person, we have a lot of difficulty with change, with the unknown and unfamiliarity of things, more so than autistic people. And for those who don't know, autistic is just a not autistic person. So there's that. And there's also a really big urge in me to mask, which is something that we talked about last episode, but to refresh everyone's minds, masking in very simplified terms is when an autistic person tries to conceal or hide their autistic traits, and they try to act as autistic as possible. So you can still mask without preparing things, but a big part of me masking in this podcast was preparing it, because I could prepare every single word I said, every pause, every inflection of tone. And obviously a podcast is kind of like a conversation. That's also really hard for me. And on top of all, a lot of anxiety and just anxious thoughts roaming around in my brain, that ultimately made me really want to apologize basically for my existence. I wanted to apologize for moving weird or saying the wrong thing or making a mistake, even though making mistakes is so normal and human. So my response to myself was Andrea, no, that is stupid. That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Do not apologize. Exactly. Don't do that. And so I guess this is me not apologizing, and also just sharing what I'm feeling, sharing my process, sharing all these thoughts that are often hidden. People don't want to talk about these things, especially autistic people. And yeah, I feel like sharing or expressing what you're feeling to others makes me feel a lot better. It makes me feel like I don't have to carry this burden with myself. I can share it with other people. So yeah, I just wanted to say that.
I love it. I really appreciate you taking the time to explain to us how you're feeling. I already applaud you for the fact que despite the discomfort, we're still here. Y estamos haciendo algo que te está pushing un poco tus limits. Pero I don't know, I'm just so happy. I'm so happy. And I'm grateful también.
Thank you. I feel happy and grateful too, but also really nervous.
Te creo. Y todo tiene que ver. O sea, no son excluyentes. Pueden haber todas esas cosas going on. Pero empecemos esta conversación.
Yes, okay.
How do we get here a few months later? Pasó que Andrea texted me y me dijo que volvió a escuchar su episodio y le pasaron varias cosas. Entonces acá estamos para hablar de qué cosas, qué cambios sintió desde ese episodio que fue el 39 y ya estamos por el 55. Entonces, a lot of time has passed. Entonces, Andrea, my first question would be for you is what are the differences that you perceive of your own autism from then and now?
Okay, so first I want to just give like the overall feeling that I got when I listened to myself. And that is that I could hear that I was just like really, really hurting and still processing a lot of trauma and just a much more insecure person. And I think in a lot of ways, I'm still many of those things. I'm still all of those things, actually. But I think I've grown tremendously since then. And I think I wouldn't even have realized if I hadn't listened to it again. Like before listening to it, I was like, oh, yeah, I probably, since then, I probably haven't changed that much. But when I listened to it, I was shook. I was like, whoa, like I don't recognize myself. Um, and I think in general, I had a much more bleak view of the world and of my autism and my mental illnesses. For example, how I even like defined what autism is, I would now focus more on how autism isn't just like a diagnosis with a list of symptoms. Obviously, that's like helpful to get to know what autistic people go through, but it's not just that. It's a way of being and it's a way of thinking and perceiving. And it is part of being human. It's part of our neurodiversity. And this may sound a little obvious, but many times as autistic people, we have felt like aliens, not human. You have actually no idea how many times I've heard autistic people say that they have felt like aliens at one point in their lives. And honestly, for a reason, because we have been treated as such. Historically, autistic people have not been treated as human, as equal. They haven't not been treated right. But the truth is that we are just as human and normal as any other person on this earth. Being different isn't a bad thing. In fact, it should be celebrated. We should accept and value our differences and not try to morph into other people and mask, like I was saying, like I have this really big urge to mask, but we shouldn't. I want to mention also that I know unmasking can be a privilege because for many autistic people, it is not safe to be themselves. That being in their workplace, at school, in their own families, in the streets. So it's like a lot easier said than done. But I just wanted to share that these like feelings or things that I'm saying like goes out to anyone who feels different, to anyone who feels alone, to anyone who feels like an alien. I actually saw a video recently on YouTube that talks about this. It's called "Watch This If You Don't Fit Anywhere and Why I Felt Different" by Danny Calleiro, and I'm pretty sure he's not even autistic that I know of, but you could see like the comments were filled of autistic people relating to her singing. So I thought that was really interesting.
Wow. Sí, yo creo que lo que acabas de decir, hablar de esta sensación de feeling alone or feeling different or feeling like an alien, como que desgraciadamente como que apela a muchas cosas, muchas condiciones, muchos momentos en la vida. Em, Justo estaba viendo un Netflix show que se llama Glow Up o algo así, pero es de make-up, es como una competencia de maquillaje que hacen en Inglaterra que I love. Y una de las contestants de esta última temporada es autista. Y en una de las como ejercicios que tenían que hacer, tenían que poner makeup on themselves, pero show themselves, como an identity type of makeup. Y hizo este masking que tú hablabas tanto, eh, que es esta comparación de, de ponerse la máscara y sentirse otra persona for safety versus como what's beneath. Entonces, I feel like I'm glad to be part of this conversation porque siento que estoy como entendiendo y entrando un poco a tu mundo para tener más empatía, o sea, para poder ser más respetuosa, para poder entender. Pero qué interesante que un video que no necesariamente sea hecho por un autista o una persona que tenga autismo, apele a tanta de esa gente, a esa comunidad.
Yes, I actually watched that show. I loved it.
¿Really?
I actually recreated that look, the same look of the mask.
Ajá.
I have it on my TikTok if you want. I
Oh
can
my
show you a
God.
picture
Yeah,
later.
I love it. I love it.
But I love that. Like I actually kind of started tearing up when I watched that because it felt like so amazing to watch on a show like that representation.
Ujú.
Dude, I'm tearing up right now. Oh my god.
Sí, obvio.
I'm sorry.
No, nothing to apologize. We're not apologizing in this podcast.
True. We're not apologizing.
Ujú.
Yeah.
Pero es emotional,
Um,
es impactante, es
yeah.
bonito. Ujú. I love it. En este planning de este episodio hablamos un poco antes con Andrea y me contó un poco de esta como particularidad que le pasó al escucharse nuevamente y que sentía estas dos perspectivas, una más positiva y una más negativa. Do you want to talk about those things that you felt from like re-listening to this experience?
Okay. Wait. First, I kind of forgot that I want to mention something else.
Dale.
That's okay.
¿Sí?
So this is more like about my autism and like the differences how I view my autism. And I kind of implied this before, but I want to say it more explicitly because I think it's like really important. And I feel like a lot of autistic people can relate with me on this. Um, I would like to talk about how my autistic label has set me free. I think a lot of people think that being or having that label of autistic is like limiting. And that's why, for example, this is a conversation in the autistic community of like being called an autistic person versus a person with autism. So I feel like people, usually professionals or people who are around other autistic people, try to use person with autism because they don't want to like identify the whole person as being autistic as if autism was like something bad. But most autistic people would rather be called an autistic person because that's what we are, that's what we identify as, and it is not necessarily a bad thing. And I think that my label of autistic liberates me and empowers me. And I had no idea I was autistic for most of my life. I grew up in the dark, hiding and alone. But my autistic label, I feel like it shines a light on my being. And I feel like I'm no longer hiding and I'm no longer alone. Like I found a community of other people who have the same things as me. It has better helped me understand myself. It has led to a deeper acceptance of myself. And self acceptance can be one of the most powerful things we can do as humans. Um, And obviously, labels are helpful because they describe part of our experience, but they don't necessarily define who we are. I'm obviously more than my autism, but that doesn't take away my autistic self and the label, which has in many ways set me free.
Well, I remember you kind of touched upon this in last episode, pero creo que hoy día como la claridad y el énfasis es muy importante y lo encuentro muy bacán, porque como tú dices, al no haber sabido que eras autista, había una confusión, te sentías alienated, not seen, not understood, not identified, y la identificación es algo tan poderoso que le pasa al ser humano, como que yo me identifico con esto, uno se identifica con canciones, con conceptos, con ideas, con religiones, con lo que sea, y sentirte seen for who you are, y como tú dices, you're more than your autism, pero este labeling llevó a un deeper understanding como about yourself, y te trajo liberty, te trajo de alguna forma maybe peace, I don't know if that's the right word, pero como of like everything fit in finally, como ese momento de haber sido como muy powerful y como que no tiene que ser menospreciado.
Yes.
Awesome, awesome. Pasemos entonces a esta pregunta que te tenía, que era como esta dicotomía, this two-part feeling of re-listening to your first podcast episode.
Okay. So I think part of me was really cringing at myself. But part because I felt like I don't necessarily like feel exactly how I felt back then. Pero part of me at the same time wants to like honor and protect that part of myself. But I think at the same time it was so important that I took the chance doing something so completely out of my comfort zone with this podcast because maybe without it I wouldn't be the person that I am today. I think that expressing all my hurt and the experiences of the time is what I needed to do for myself. So ultimately, I'm thankful for myself and not to sound conceited. And I'm thankful for you, Ivania, for giving me that space.
Oh. No me esperaba esa última parte. It's a pleasure. It's been a pleasure. But again, let's go back to you. Let's go back to you feeling grateful for yourself. See, let's go back to this part that you said so perfectly. And I feel like, I don't know if it's very often expressed, but I feel like se puede aplicar a cualquier experiencia, a cualquier persona, como, when have you done something for yourself that despite the challenge or despite the discomfort, como you're so grateful for yourself for having done that? Como que eso fue lo más especial que yo sentí cuando tú me hiciste un resumen, porque obvio la idea era tener este como surprise factor contigo. Pero es una sensación muy rica y algo que quería recalcar en este episodio, en este podcast. Lo importante que es, o sea, como lo importante que es lo que tú hiciste. O sea, you reached out to me back in the day. Entonces había como un call to action, algo que was speaking from your heart, y obvio que no te voy a decir que no. Pero lo impactante y lo bonito que ha sido para ti como como created some sort of momentum a todo lo que has hecho hoy día. O sea, I'm still blown away by your TikTok account. I love the fact that you started a YouTube channel. Como que it's been a catapulting energy of you como putting yourself first and lanzándote y doing stuff. Y eso de atreverse, I feel like it's such a breath of fresh air. Como que I am obsessed and I love it. And I feel like that's one of the things that I como applaud you for. Y I wanted to like bring into the conversation. ¿Cachai? Ojalá cualquiera who's listening to us como que feels how important that is to really go after it. I'm not saying social media is the way for everyone, but if that's your thing, como look, como, mira lo que se puede hacer, ¿cachai? Y creo que lo más bonito de como este space and time, este momento, este evento de reflexionar contigo, Andrea, es eso, como que taking a leap of faith for yourself despite the discomfort or because of the discomfort within itself es como que para mí shows a sense of greatness, como it's like apostándote por primera vez y como not allowing fears or whatever we all go through que nos impida, como it shouldn't be an impediment. Use it as fuel, learn how to put it to the side, whatever you gotta do, pero como doing it regardless es como the bottom line que como que quería enfatizar y que I wanted to bring to the table.
See, that reminded me, like, it's not been easy. Like,
Of
you know,
course.
it sounds like, oh yeah, just go for it. Good luck. But
Obvio.
it's been really, really hard. I think this is kind of what I talked about in last episode about like exposure therapy. That I started this journey in therapy by just like pidiendo una Coca-Cola, because that's what was the most terrifying thing to me at that point. Era pedirme una Coca-Cola. And I just started doing that. And then like I did that for months and months and months. Then I did my TikTok. My TikTok, at first I didn't talk anything. I didn't say anything. But then I started scripting it and I did that for a while. And then like I could talk more freely and I could do that. And with my YouTube, it's like still starting. Like I have to do it many times. I have to edit a lot. Like every 50 seconds is like a cut. Pero I'm doing it, and that's what matters. So I just wanted to say that it's important to, like, if you're listening to this and you're like, damn, like I want to do that, like I want to face my fears, like start slow, start small, because and you have to be like compassionate with yourself and nice to yourself throughout this whole process as well. So I just wanted to say that.
Sí, y qué importante. Sí, tampoco queremos romantizar o glamorize this effect, como just do it, como lo dicen por ahí. Sure, es muy bonito y es como a nice saying y a good thing to like have in perspective. But of course it's not easy y como tú dijiste, taking baby steps, como no pasar, no dejar eso de lado, como no pensar que como que you have to go full out. Some people that works, pero otra gente tenerse paciencia. No es porque quiera sacar como protagonismo, pero por hacer un small como example, yo con mi podcast tenía que empezar igual, de alguna forma. Y cada episodio, de poquito a poquito, uno va mejorando. O sea, esa era mi mentalidad, como growth over perfectionism, over greatness, over como la wea más increíble que he hecho. No, tenía que empezar. Y tengo que tener paciencia. Y trust the process un poquito. Que si con consistency uno va mejorando. Pero qué importante eso de exposure therapy igual. Porque si no, uno nunca aprende. O sea, si que uno nunca hace las cosas y se equivoca en el momento, nunca aprendiste, nunca hubieses aprendido. Entonces, qué buen consejo y qué buen detalle como to point. Mira, which was something that we did different también en este podcast, es que I shared it in my Instagram and I asked people if they had any questions for Andrea, and we actually received a question. Entonces, I found that to be awesome. Acá hay un como audience interaction, if you will, and I love that. Entonces, Andrea, this is the question that one of my listeners te hizo a ti. ¿Cuáles crees que son los desafíos de Chile frente al autismo? That's a very broad question, pero yo creo que they really just want your opinion.
Yes, that is very broad. I don't do well with broad questions, but I'm going to try my best to answer it. So honestly, we have like a really long way to go, not only in Chile, but in the rest of the world too, when it comes to autism. People's understanding and acceptance of it and the resources available to get support. To be completely honest, I feel like I have a hard time answering this question because I feel like I live in such a privileged bubble where I am able to get therapies. I am able to have a supportive family, and I am able to unmask in some ways. But I feel like there's a lot of autistic people in Chile that are mobilizing things and hoping for a better world for autistic people and for disabled people. For example, in the writing of the new constitution, there has been many meetings, petitions, etc., to have a what's called ley de autismo, where people with autism are given the chance to get therapy, and also things like the Iniciativa Popular de Norma 8082, where people with disabilities and their rights are being discussed. I actually wanted to talk about this norma because right now, as the constitution is being written, there is no rights for people with disabilities.
Wow.
And this norma is really important. It's made by this abogada that works with specifically like human rights. And it's very much like all the basics like ticked off of what we want for our rights. And that will like allow for like other laws and other things in the future to be like, hey, it's in the constitution, so you have to do something about it, and that's really important. I think it's a slow process, but we have to be patient. Maybe this norma that I'm talking about won't have any effect for me or for my children, but maybe for like my grandchildren, and that's like how things go. I don't know when this podcast is gonna be uploaded.
Como next week.
Oh, then never mind. I mean, hopefully we get the signatures that we need, because at the moment we have less than half of them.
Mhm.
But we'll see what happens. That's not the end all or be all of the rights of people with disabilities in Chile, no, but it's important.
Sí, de todas maneras.
So yeah, that's my answer to the question.
Sí. Difícil pregunta. Igual, ojalá que for the listener le haya gustado tu respuesta. Creo que igual hablar de Chile, porque estamos viviendo acá, es importante, y la nueva constitución, o sea, I know I'm a very ignorant person, pero esto era ya one more of the ignorant things I should know. Y que lata que no esté en the constitution, y ojalá. Do you have the link? ¿Cuándo es la fecha? Porque puedo poner el link de signatures on the Spotify.
La fecha es como, a ver, la fecha en unos días solamente, el 1 de febrero. Así que
esto va a salir el 31 de... Bueno, lo voy a poner just in case, si es que alguien escucha el lunes este podcast y quiere firmar. Voy a dejar el link igual. But I think that's important. And thank you for answering de todas maneras. Andrea, is there anything else you'd like to talk about antes de terminar este short and sweet episode?
Yes, I also want to talk about about BPD a little bit.
Okay.
So, although I talk about it briefly, I would also want to put more focus on how treatable BPD is.
Mm-hmm.
Many professionals actually have no idea what they're talking about. Will actually refuse to work with patients with BPD because to them it's incurable and therefore not worth pursuing a therapeutic treatment. And well, this is so false, because time and time again in studies, it has been proven that with the right therapy, people with BPD can drastically improve their condition. And a lot of people with BPD are at a higher risk to attempt or die by suicide, not only because it's part of the disorder, because suicidal ideation is a symptom, but because many feel like there's no way out because the prognosis of the diagnosis is so bleak. And this is why it's so important to spread this information. And also, like, some similarities with autism, like people with autism are actually at a higher risk too to die by suicide or to attempt. I think one study said that it was 3 times more likely that an autistic person will attempt suicide than like a realistic person. And so that's why I think it's so important to talk more openly about autism, and that you can actually lead a happy life being autistic. And I think part of the reason why I didn't share these things, like with BPD or autism, is because I didn't fully believe them myself, which makes me really sad to think about. But I'm glad we had this second time around, um, to express like how much I've changed. And yeah, I also wanted to talk about like what made me have that change.
Yeah.
So first of all, I'm not entirely sure. I think, as I said before, like I didn't even notice that I was changing. And I think it's like a very natural process, pero it can be a combination of many things. One of them, and I think it's really important, is time. You need time to process hard emotions and tough situations. You need time to learn. Like I've been in therapy, in constant therapy for 6 years now, and I still have a long way to go. I graduated a year late of high school. I spent almost 2 years doing absolutely nothing, no studies, trying to get myself together and getting myself out of my comfort zone and seeing how that has a positive effect on my life. That's another thing. I feel like it's like a ripple effect. And I think for me, especially right now in the past few weeks, it even goes down to the right dosage of medication. And and also like seeing myself get slowly better in my mental health, even if it's only a little bit, it has given me hope, as well as not giving up. I feel like every day is a battle for me still, where I either choose to keep going or just give up. I have to remind myself of how thankful I am to be alive, because being alive means that I get to have the possibility for change. And the I don't know, this is kind of maybe
No, dale nomás. I'm
too
enjoying.
too graphic, pero like you have a path. And this is the path that que me topé con, of like, well, I either was gonna die and kill myself, or I was gonna do something else. And I chose to do something else every day. And that is like what I'm confronted with every day, honestly. Like, I'm gonna do something else. I'm gonna do something else. That's what I always try to do.
Mhm.
And yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Estamos hablando de cosas importantes. Ojalá voy a poner igual un warning para la gente que se sienta comfortable con los temas que estamos hablando. Pero yo creo que igual es necesario empezar a como dar espacios para hablar de esto, porque no, again, no debe haber sido fácil. Em, o sea, no te podría pinpoint qué cosa no ha sido fácil. Yo creo que es un conjunto de cosas que en tu vida no han sido fácil, pero the fact que hoy día como con tanta energía y con tanta como determination, por más que yo sé que debe ser muy difícil días y días, como continuing y not giving up y allowing for change y teniendo esta perspectiva tan como tan rica de lo que es change. Yo creo que mucha gente puede ser que a veces como it's uncomfortable. A veces yo estoy como enojada. I don't want to change anymore. I don't want to continue growing. I want to have a break of my life, you know? Como give me a break.
You need those breaks too.
Sí, uno a veces está cansado, es como, pucha, ya aprendí 1000 cosas ayer, como no quiero que me sigan pasando cosas, pero no sé, yo creo que esto es lo que es como lo rico de los podcasts y lo rico de hablar con la gente es como uno se va dando cuenta de las oportunidades de la vida o como lo bonito que puede ser la vida. O sea, yo sé que no es fácil y uno cuando está en una situación negativa, en una mentalidad negativa o cuando todo te está saliendo mal, uno está como, "Oh, por qué sigo? ¿Cachai? Como, what's the point? Pero poder mirarlo desde el otro lado y decir como, I am aware and I constantly choose to optar, como tú dijiste, por este otro path. I think that's como what makes me so happy and what I like love about these conversations, como understanding people's stories and getting to see como their like switch, como that time and place, como where these things start happening. That time. And there's so much that you're doing, there's so much that you're helping, que como que rico, ojalá eso sirva, no sé si te sirve como motivación también, tu propio como the fact that you're building a community, you're getting to talk about your story, como how has that been helpful maybe in this process?
It has been so incredibly helpful because I don't know, there's just something so therapeutic of just like sharing your experience and just talking. And well, I did it through the internet, but you can do it with like people, like real people in your life. I think that maybe it was easier for me to do it to like strangers on the internet because because you're not like so emotionally tied to other people and like what are they gonna say? I feel like if it's like strangers, it's like, oh, they can say whatever, like they're strangers, like I don't care. I don't know. That's my perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And either way, like most of my comments that I get are so positive and they're so helpful and they're like, I don't know, they made me feel like less alone. And yeah, I forgot the question.
El tema era cómo te ha motivado o si te ha ayudado como esta sensación de start to build your community en distintas plataformas.
Oh yeah. One of the things that I got, and it's kind of unrelated, but one of the you know that those tests that you do in high school, like right before you graduate to
Sí.
like see what you're good at.
Mm-hmm.
And those like one of the things surprisingly that I got was like that I like to communicate, which is like so weird. Pero they were explaining to me like, yeah, maybe you want to do something that has to do with like communicating. And yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna do that with like my career, but I'm doing that with my social media and it makes me happy. Like that's just personally what brings me joy.
Absolutely.
So
Qué bacán, qué bacán. O sea, yo siento que esto ya está haciendo un poco tu career, como que te está formando tu path y tiene todo que ver, o sea, social media y pursue something in the communication realm, para mí tiene todo que ver, sino que estoy haciendo yo. Sí, I think that's awesome. Yo creo que in a few years we're going to look back to this moment y ver como your path and how things have developed y vamos a estar las dos como pleasantly surprised y pretty amazed.
hopefully.
Va a estar cool. Va a estar awesome. Well, Andrea, I really just wanted to thank you again for coming along this podcast. I hope people listening, you enjoyed the second part. If you didn't listen, go to the first one, but avoid, perceive, and really listen to the growth también. Y feel free, I'll leave todas las social medias de Andrea on the podcast notes para que puedan ir a seguirla y ver su contenido. Thank you, Andrea, so much for coming along.
Thank you so much for having me again. I'm so happy.
I'm so happy too. Bye, everyone. See you in the next episode.